why the Radrover was so much slower than the XS when technically they should have been equal in performance when we raced. So I'm going to pull the motor out and physically see what's internal, because from rumors that I've been told that this is not a true 750 watt motor. And one of the things that I do is I rebuild these motors all the time. I know the difference between the 500, 750, 350, and all the other Bafang motors of this class. I've rebuilt hundreds of them. So let's get down to it. Let me take this motor out and we'll see what's going on. That is not a 750 watt motor. This is a 500 watt motor. It's got a 750 watt large connector end on it though. That's kind of deceiving. This is a Sondors 500 watt motor. Notice they're exactly the same. Now you might go into sitting there saying that these windings might be different, but I can tell by looking at the windings they're both exactly the same gauge. There's no difference between the two. I could go in a little bit more detail with how the motors are wound together, but it's not really necessary. I've rebuilt many of these motors from site. I can tell you exactly which ones are which. And this is definitely not a 750 watt motor. The 750 watt motors that are used in the Sondors bike, and most everybody else that runs the 750 watt version of this motor design, the stator and rotor practically touch this cover. So it's about 50% larger in size, which means more mass. Reason you get more torque and more performance out of the 750 versus the 500. Yes, you can make the 500 watt motor put out about 750 watts by upping the amperage to the motor. I've sat there and made one of these motors put out 1500 watts by changing the voltage, put 72 volts through these motors. These motors can handle it. But when it comes to performance, like hill climbing, the 750 watt larger motor performs much better. Several of the biggest issues I had with Adam Jarvis's video is, number one, the way he starts off the video calling Sondors junk, when in fact he should be sitting there saying Radrover is deceiving with a fake 750 watt motor. But of course he will never say that. Then he sits there and he talks about the Sondors Storm Owners Group. Let me fill you in on a little information about that. Number one, the Owners Group is run by owners of Sondors bikes, including myself. We have 4 admins in the group to monitor what's going on, and we try to keep all topics about the Sondors bike, because it is the Sondors Owners Group. When people come there and use a search engine, we don't want them having to go through multitudes of different bikes. We have different issues. So anytime anybody posts about different bikes, if they're talking about issues with their other bikes, those threads get deleted. As far as Adam is concerned, he got booted from the group because all he did was say he kept pimping the Radrover bike and kept pimping his products that he has for the Radrover bike. You know, yes, it's a little bit of ranting that I'm doing right now, but it's basically a direct rebuttal to his video. All ranting aside, I tried to show a fair comparison between the two bikes. They claim it's a 750 watt motor, but after tearing it down, it's actually a 500 watt motor internals. I'm comparing it to the Sondors X, which is a 500 watt bike, since it's more of a fair comparison to what Adam Jarvis used in his video, which was a standard 350 watt. And I'm not bringing out the XS model because it would be unfair to compare a true 750 watt motor bike to the Radrover. In Adam Jarvis's video, he complained about rust getting down inside the fork area here, which I somewhat agree with, because it's a tight spot, it's hard to clean, but you can clean it if you need to. But Both bikes are prone to getting rust in different areas. For example, one thing he did not mention in his video is the way they mount the controller in the back and the way these screws all rust up. There's many more examples, but if you're going to be in an ocean environment, you're going to have rust and you have to deal with it. That's just something normal. As far as the shock quality, they're both in the same category. There's not much difference between the two other than the one having a lockout. Give you an example of how well these Radrover forks are. Compression on them sucks, and when they do bounce back, they clunk. So when you're riding around, they clunk all the time. On the X model, they're very similar. So between the two forks, there's not much of a difference. The XS, on the other hand, has the new Air Ride forks. They are much smoother and also adjustable on the dampening and air ride, so you can adjust the ride height of the forks as well. As far as needing a chain guard, this bike has been running on the beach in the sand for over a year now. There's no damage to the frame. Reason being is, on the Sondors bike, this portion of the frame sticks out further than on the Radrover, so the chain never hits the frame. So no kind of guard is needed on it. Now you come over to the Radrover, and they need a guard on here because when the chain comes down, it hits the frame. So it needs a guard on there to protect it, whereas the Sondors bike doesn't. And usually when they have to put a guard on it, that's an afterthought. That's not an added protection or anything. That's an afterthought on design. On the Radrover bike, they come standard with a twist throttle. It's actually considered a half twist for safety reasons. From here, it's relatively easy to get to the shifter. In Adam's video, he talks about an aftermarket product that he helped design, so I'd say he has some stake in bad-mouthing the Sondors bike. That attachment attaches to the twist throttle. When it's on there, it means your hand is choked way back here, way off the throttle, so you can use it. Well, when you're using that thumb throttle with his attachment, means you can't reach the shifter. You have to reach over, slide your hand over to get to the shifter to change gears. You're stuck with that attachment on there. So that attachment is an utter joke. If you don't like the twist throttle, put a thumb throttle on the bike. On the Sondors, they come with a twist shifter and a thumb throttle. With your hand on the grip, it's easy to reach the throttle. It's not like your way Adam was exaggerating, you had to reach all over to get to that thumb throttle. It's actually easy to get to. He was holding the grip back here off the twist shifter, but normally when you ride, you're in this position. Go to your throttle, it's right there. One of the things Adams talks about in his video, how cheap the plug connector to the battery is on the Sondors bike. Let me show you the difference between the two. On the Radrover, it's got a two-prong connector, all plastic, and it just snaps together. Remember, two-prong, low current draw between those two prongs since they're small. On the Sondors bike, it's got a nice metal connector that it screws into the battery, and it's four-prong. Two of the prongs are on the negative, two of the prongs are on the positive. So you get better current draw through this connector versus on the Radrover. Don't be fooled. He's calling this metal connector versus that plastic one cheap? Hardly. Since we are comparing the X model to the Radrover comes with a 48 volt, 11.7 amp hour battery. The Sondors come stock with a 48 volt 17.5 amp hour battery. What that means in range is you've got about 50% more range out of the Sondors bike versus the Radrover bike. Replacement Radrover battery is $500. Replacement Sondors battery is $400. You're getting a larger capacity battery for less money, made with good quality cells. He touts the fact that the Radrover comes with a 180 millimeter rotor versus a 160 millimeter rotor. The 180 millimeter rotor definitely does have more stopping power, but when he sits there and talks about the bike handling, that's not true. The brake performance is not going to change the handling of the bike. That's simple. The XS, on the other hand, comes with 180 millimeter rotor and hydraulic brakes versus mechanical brakes. Your choice. If you're thinking about purchasing an e-bike, go to reliable sources and don't trust people like Adam Jarvis, who is clearly biased in his video.